Welcome to a tale woven with threads of danger, desire, and the supernatural. I'm AC Dawn, your narrator and author of Crystal Clear, a paranormal Halloween novella. I plan to release a chapter each day leading up to All Hallows Eve. Keep in mind, this isn't your typical professionally produced audiobook. It's a personal reading, and a chance for you to hear the story as it echoes in the mind of its creator. If you're eager to leap ahead and hear the entire tale, you can follow me on my Ream subscription for free and gain instant access to the full recording. But for now, let us take our first steps into a world where ancient evil stirs and the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. Chapter 9. The spirits fell back as I pelted through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing around me. Whatever command Jason had given them, it didn't extend to chasing me very far. I stopped in the foyer of the second floor. Acres of glass windows enclosed the area, and an eerie green glow spilled in, throwing erratic shadows. I gripped the smooth metal rail that set the boundary to the second floor veranda and peered through the green haze that rose outside. The cold metal seeped into my hands, echoing the dread in my heart. The coven spread out across the parking lot, undoubtedly encircling the entire building. My mother and grandmother stood side by side with their arms raised, chanting while the wind whipped their hair in their faces. My coven alone couldn't produce that much magical mojo. Every witch in the area must have been out there to cast such a powerful protection spell. Magic rose and it pressed in through the glass, sliding over me with a whisper-soft caress. A shiver chased through me. I stood in a place of healing while an unspeakable evil fought its way into the world. The light undulated and danced, and I stared into it, wondering what I should do next. They're fierce, aren't they? Buckley women have always been fierce. I whirled around to face the wispy voice. A ghostly young woman stood next to me, and I stumbled backward, automatically muttering an incantation to keep it away. The woman's dress was straight from the 1920s with its ankle-length straight skirt and bow pinned at the waist. She wore a long rope of beads knotted to rest between her breasts. Her curls were tucked up with a black ribbon, though a few of them had escaped and tumbled down her neck. The incantation died on my lips. Granny? It was as if my great-great-grandmother had walked straight out of the faded black and white picture that hung on my mother's wall, taken 100 years ago to the day as my grandmother left to attend the Coven Samhain celebration. I'd often looked at that photo, wondering about the woman who was so much part of my life from beyond the veil. "What are you doing here?" She looked out the window for a moment, taking in the green swirling light and my mother and grandmother leading the chant. "Isadora was always a firecracker. Even as a little girl, she was fearless," Granny said, referring to my mother. My mom's viciousness and power still amazed me. She stood up to a vampire tonight. My great-great-grandmother laughed, and it sounded just like my grandma. "That sounds about right. What do you think of him? He's hotsy-totsy, isn't he?" She waggled her eyebrows at me. I didn't have to ask who she meant. "He's a vampire." "Nobody's perfect, my dear," my grandmother retorted and winked. I grinned for a heartbeat before the reality of the situation intruded. Granny nodded at my sober expression. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years of messages and you couldn't mention that I had a date with the Vampire King?" "You know the seers' identities are kept secret. And besides, there are rules about what I can share from this side of the veil." Her mouth turned down in a frown that mirrored my own. "There are rules? Are there, like, some kind of ghost police?" I asked, torn between curiosity and irritation. She sighed, and it sounded like a rustle of leaves. "There are rules around magic, even in death. I knew this would be a pivotal rising, but not even I saw Mariana would make a deal with the devil." She shook her head and turned to study the green haze. I stared at her and fought to find words. "What do you mean, a deal with the devil? You mean, like, the actual devil, Lucifer, or whatever? I didn't even know he was real." My grandmother looked surprised. "Well, of course he's real. Besides, you saw Mariana. She was walking straight out of hell with a legion of demons on her heels. That doesn't happen unless she's done some serious wheeling and dealing with the devil. Even though he created her eons ago, the Lord of the Dark Realms gives nothing away without benefit to himself." "Do you mean she doesn't usually travel around with an entourage of demons?" My shoulders slumped and I looked down to study my hands resting on the rail. As I recalled Jason's memories, there were no demons in any of them. I was pretty sure I screwed up big time. Granny paused at my stricken expression. "You did tell Jason she was approaching with an army of demons, didn't you?" My grandmother frowned when I shook my head. "That's a pretty important detail, Adelaide," she scolded. Well, how was I supposed to know that a posse of demons was a new trick? Nothing has exactly gone to plan tonight. I'd been so focused on the location, I totally omitted the details. My grandmother was quick to move on. "You've got to help him. He'll have his hands full with Mariana. Something is different, bigger, with this rising. I can't see what it is." Concern creased my grandmother's face. What am I supposed to do against a legion of demons? Hysteria clawed its way through me. Goddess, this night just kept getting better and better. Granny waved away my concern. "You don't have to fight them. You just need to keep them from crossing over." "Oh, yeah, just keep the demon horde from waltzing out of hell. Sure, no problem." I gripped the railing, pressing my fingertips hard against the smooth metal surface as I wrestled to control my fear. "Stop that," Granny snapped. "You've got a job to do." Her glare, so like my mother's, silenced my irritated retort. I pressed my lips together and waited for her to continue. "The demons won't be able to escape without a blood price, so you should have a little time. But as soon as either vampire delivers the fatal blow, the portal will be wide open. You've got to seal it as soon as you can." "Well, how do I do that?" I fought to keep my voice from cracking. "Sometimes it's the obvious thing, like closing the door," my grandmother said with a shrug of her shoulder. She thought for a moment, bouncing her finger on her bottom lip, just like I did when I was turning a problem over in my mind. "Blood and salt are usually used in portal magic, and you must say a prayer of closing. It's not something I've had a lot of experience with, but I know you'll come up with something." "Well, that makes one of us," I muttered. "What else?" Granny faded, becoming even more translucent, and I reached out even though I knew I couldn't touch her. I wanted to beg her to stay, to help me. I couldn't do this by myself. "Trust your instincts, Adelaide, and do not hesitate." Granny gave me a sweet smile and blew a kiss before vanishing from sight. I glanced back at the green curtain that hung in the air. Would that be enough to contain the evil rising? I wasn't about to stand around and find out. Even though I had zero idea how I was going to do it, it was time to kick some demon ass all the way back to hell. I ran back through the operating room, skidding to a stop outside the morgue. Magic poured from the open doorway. It slammed into me and I stumbled backward, catching myself on the door jamb. Inside, Jason crouched like a panther to the side of the portal, which was wide open and glowing red and orange with hellish fire. I stared in horror as Mariana stepped from the flames like a goddess come to life. Her ebony gown, with a skirt slit to her hip and plunging neckline, clung to her perfect body. Black boots that my mother would undoubtedly refer to as hooker boots hugged Mariana's legs in soft leather. Only a vampire could walk on the wickedly pointed stiletto heels. Glossy black hair hung straight down her back to her waist and was tied in the back with a black ribbon. She looked exactly the same as she had eons ago. A dull roar filled the air, and a flicker of uncertainty crossed Jason's face. "She's bringing demons from hell," I yelled over the increasing noise and stepped inside the room. Mariana's gaze shifted to the doorway with raptor intensity, and my stomach rolled. Cold and inhuman, with her fangs bared, she raked me with a look. "You brought a snack. How thoughtful of you, my king. Oh." Mariana drew in a deep inhale. "A witch. Delicious." She said the word with a sensual purr and licked her lips. I shivered and pressed against the wall, glaring at the vampire queen. My heart hammered, and I gathered my courage in the face of the beautiful terror who was looking at me like I was a juicy strawberry. Buckley women are fierce. I said it in my mind like a mantra, and I pictured my mother's face and centered my thoughts. The energy of the goddess coiled within me, ready to answer my call. I was a Buckley, and no demons were escaping on my watch. Jason put himself between me and Mariana. He set his feet and growled at his wife. "You've been busy this last century, I see." He nodded to the portal where the swirling fire glowed ever brighter. Mariana laughed and glided away from the portal toward Jason. The Dark Lord knows the time is ripe. The world has lost its magic, its innocence. Sin and corruption are rampant, and he sees the opportunity to emerge from his banishment. The world's belief that he belongs there is all that binds him to the Dark Realm. My followers and I will change that belief, and our Creator will rise again. Jason shook his head. Let's have this done, my queen. His tone dripped sarcasm and disdain as he recognized her title. In a blur of motion, he leapt at her. They tumbled backward through the room, their bodies slamming into the concrete floor with the force of a landslide. Being in the same room with two fighting vampires was very much like trying to hug a tornado. They crashed around, laying waste to everything in their path. Framed safety posters fell to the ground and shattered. Mariana and Jason smashed into cabinets and cupboards, leaving the doors broken and the contents strewn on the floor. The walls caved in where their bodies impacted, and all the while they snarled and snapped, each trying to gain the upper hand. I edged toward the portal, trying to avoid the ricocheting vampires and flying debris. Demons loomed just on the other side of the flames. The roaring hurt my ears. It was like standing in front of a speaker that was playing static at full volume. A claw broke through the portal's surface and latched onto the edge of the opening. I stumbled back from the shiny, razor-sharp talons that dug into the metal frame, but it couldn't come any further. Yet. Frustrated, it screeched, and I thought my ears would burst. Goddess help me. I prayed with a shaking voice, terror rising in me as an insect-like appendage joined the claw, and the shapes in the fiery portal grew larger, more defined. I gripped the silver door with both hands, remembering Granny's advice about trying the obvious solution. The door didn't budge. Watching the demons warily, I planted my foot against the wall and heaved with all my might. It didn't give an inch. So much for the obvious option. I stared at the portal, bouncing my finger on my bottom lip as I searched for any indication of how to close it. The flames swirled and danced, leaving spots in front of my vision. Misshapen shadows and inhuman forms flickered in and out of view, twisting in the roaring inferno. Ghastly shrieks and howls echoed from the portal. More talons and claws gripped the edge of the door, roaring their displeasure when they could go no further. Sulphurous heat seared my lungs, forcing me back a step. Panicked thoughts chased each other through my mind as I prayed for an epiphany. Magic stirred within me, but I didn't know how to direct it. From the corner of my eyes, motion snagged my attention. I turned just in time to see the whirling dervish of vampires bearing down on me. I stumbled away, but they slammed into me with the force of a freight train, knocking me headfirst into the portal to hell. Thanks so much for listening. As the shadows grow longer and Halloween draws closer, we will continue to unravel this tale of danger and desire. If you can't wait for tomorrow's chapter, you can follow me on my Ream subscription for free and unlock the full story right now. But if you prefer the suspense of waiting, join me again tomorrow for the next chapter. Until then, remember, the fate of humanity and a single heart hangs in the balance. Tomorrow, we venture further into the darkness.